Good morning, everybody. This is a live extreme weather briefing as we have a lot to talk about today, as it looks like Tornado Alley is going to wake up in a big way next week. Right now, it looks like Tuesday is going to be that biggest day so far in terms of severe weather potential, and it looks like southern plains, central southern plains, maybe like a southwestern Nebraska, western Kansas down through the Panhandle region certainly looks the most likely right now for that tornado potential, and I have highlighted that area there in red. This is the biggest trough ejection that we've seen in a long time. This definitely looks substantial. You can see that we have a very consolidated jet stream, big bowling ball of an upper level storm system barreling through the Four Corners region and then ejecting across the southern plains, and it does look like it's going to be early next week when that does happen. Storm chase mode is going to be activated in a big way. I've got Dominator 4 fixed. The new exhaust manifold, very clean air now getting circulated around inside Dominator 4, which is a very good thing. We've also got that flex tape keeping me dry as a baby inside when it does rain. So I'm going to be out there in the Dominator 4. I'm hoping that the Gravitrons will be ready too as well. Mark is working hard on those. At the very least, I am going to have one subsonic sensor, but it does look like the central and southern plains are going to come alive big time with this trough ejection. And there is an initial trough ejection first, and that's going to happen this weekend. And I think that the severe weather potential with that trough is a little bit lower than the next one. But before we dig in a little bit deeper into these models, I also wanted to say thank you very much for tuning in to Storm Rising Sunday night. The premiere was at Sunday night at 10 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. Central. The initial episode was Chasing Tornadoes. Next week is going to be High Plains Insanity. That includes baseball-sized hail blowing out the windows, that kind of thing. Tornado up there in eastern Wyoming that moved up the western slopes of the Black Hills, carving out a massive swath that looked like something that you'd see out in Dixie Alley, but a huge, wide tornado damage path, at least about a half-mile wide, through the pine forest there of the western Black Hills. Big-time hail as well. So next week is going to be High Plains Insanity. More tornadoes, gorilla hail as well. And then we enter the big-time hurricane season, the record-breaking hurricane season of 2020. And that is going to happen by episode 3, which is going to be Hurricane Laura, the one that we intercepted there in Lake Charles. And Lake Charles is on top of a mound, so a lot of the damage that we saw was absolutely intense there in the Lake Charles area, and different from Hurricane Ida, where a lot of those bigger towns, the populated areas, are more in bowls, protected by levee systems, floodgates as well. So the wind damage may not have seemed as bad, at least at ground level, from some of those locations in Hurricane Ida, but then the power structure extends a little bit higher up above the ground level, and that was definitely exposed to those big-time Category 4 winds, causing big problems from that storm system. So here you can see the looped GPS. This is the latest, or GFS, excuse me, not GPS. But there you can see the initial trough ejection. That's going to be this weekend right there. Kind of a sheared out, a bit of a positively tilted system, almost a primer for the next one. And now look at this system. Backside loaded, a lot of flow on its backside, digging down into the Four Corners, digging all the way down into northern Mexico before rocketing northward with incredible meridional motion all the way up toward Hudson Bay, up across Lakes Winnipeg and Manitoba. Look at that pesky upper level low. Even that's produced some tornadoes across the upper Midwest over the last couple days. That's a primer for the primer. And then there's the primer system. This is the lead one. Sheared out a little bit, not the best shape, a little bit of a positive tilt, but that one opens the floodgates for the next system. And look at all that flow located on the backside of that storm system, causing it to dig into northern Mexico before ejecting across the southern plains. That's a big-time storm system. It also ushers in a pattern shift as we get to a more consolidated upper-level jet stream. More of a just pure west to east motion. A more consolidated jet, though, also gives you the chance to have these massive open waves like this that are also relatively progressive, that are moving fast, that have a lot of flow on their backside. They peak just as they eject from the Rocky Mountain region before they move over the central and southern plains, and that's exactly what we're seeing here. Look at all that flow on the backside of this bowling ball of a storm system, ejects across the central southern plains before rocketing northward. So this trough doesn't look like a south central U.S. or a Dixie Alley type of a system. You've got this pesky upper level low that has caused some flash flooding and even some tornadoes in its northeastern quadrant up there across Illinois. Even southern Michigan had some tornado warnings in the last couple days. And here is the lead system. A little bit of a positive tilt. A lot of that flow is located on the east side of that trough. This one is more textbook with a lot of flow here on the back side, and then it matures here over the four corners before ejecting across the southern plains. That's the appropriate shape that you want to get severe weather. And you'll see this big low-level jet as well evolve with this. Not as much with the lead system this weekend, but more so. There we go. Hold on. There's that initial kind of a westerly low-level jet, a little bit more westerly with that positively tilted system. But watch this low-level jet just blow up with the next trough ejection. It's more south to north. In fact, even southeasterly in certain locations. Likely to be a blizzard as well across portions of the northern Rockies on its backside and portions of the Canadian prairies. Likely to see those blizzard conditions on the north side of that system. Still getting used to this new laptop, everybody, so bear with me here. It's an incredible laptop, but I am used to the Mac computer and using all those little hand motions for zooming in and out and everything too, so I am learning a PC now. I'm on the Armored Dell Toughbook laptop, normally one that I use for storm chasing, but look at this low-level jet, how meridional, how south to north it is, even southeasterly at times here, and then that surface low lifts north. Looks like the Black Hills get absolutely blasted by a potential early season snowfall from this. Definitely could be a potentially substantial mid-latitude cyclone, severe weather on its warm side, snow on its backside as well. And then I'm going to be heading east-southeast toward my mom's area to do some leaf peeping here across the southern Appalachians. But look at this weekend. There's the lead system. And then we get rapid leaf cyclogenesis with the next system here. Watch it into the early part of next week. There it comes. There comes the next trough. Digging way down. There it is, a 987 low there. Colorado low lifting up north. Looks like the Black Hills will get hammered. It's probably going to wrap warm air all the way around it, as well as it lifts off to the north. So right now, it doesn't look like the cold air is going to be in place across the prairies of Canada up there further north. But some of that higher terrain, like the mountains there, the Black Hills, the mountains of Colorado look like they get hammered with this type of a track. Watch this textbook. There's the initial Colorado low with a more sheared out system. And then we get the next Colorado low. Rapid leaf cyclogenesis there, dropping down into the 980s before it lifts off to the north through the Nebraska Panhandle. Big time snow in Wyoming. Look at that. Eastern Wyoming, someone's going to get absolutely hammered by blizzard conditions out there. Eastern Wyoming, probably eastern Montana, maybe the Black Hills of South Dakota, depending on that exact track. Likely some big wind there. Probably the first snowfall, at least as that cold air is pulled around on the backside of that system. But now let's take a look at some of these severe weather parameters. So the initial system on Saturday into Sunday this weekend, I think that's more of a positively tilted type of a trough. It's more of a primer for the next one that's going to come around on the backside. So here you can see that system here in the western U.S. And this one has a lot of flow on the backside. You can see this big jet on the backside of that trough. That means that it's still digging. Amplitude is still increasing as it's approaching the four corners. That's a good sign for an intensifying storm system, just as it's going to eject from the western U.S. and across the plains, bringing with it some severe weather. We call this a ski jump type of a configuration. You can see how the jet nose here is on the southeastern quadrant of that upper level system. Still have a lot of flow here on the backside by Tuesday morning, setting the stage for a big time severe weather event here downstream. Low level jet's going to be cranking just above the ground. It's going to be like when you wake up in the morning in May there and you look up and you see those low clouds racing from south to north, almost like you can touch them just above the ground. That's what you're going to wake up to on Tuesday morning across the southern high plains. And then Tuesday afternoon, the low-level jet doesn't weaken with time leading up to peak mixing, and in fact, it continues to intensify as that pressure gradient tightens across the high plains with that textbook trough ejection. Look at the low-level jet intensifying into Tuesday evening here across western Kansas, western Nebraska, down into the Texas Panhandle as well. And we can even look at some of those severe weather parameters Right now we're just looking at the operational GFS, and this event still is quite a ways out, so we really should be looking at the ensembles, but right now we're just discussing potential. And it does look like a Texas Panhandle, Oklahoma Panhandle, western Kansas, up into western Nebraska, and that's at 0Z. Really comes together here by late afternoon. This shows you basically in general the colocation of that low-level wind shear with surface-based CAPE as well. We can kind of pick a little sounding here from the Texas Panhandle, and that is absolutely textbook. I think my head is probably blocking the photograph, so let me get rid of that for now. Showing you that textbook hook-shaped photograph right there. Decent elevated mix layer coming in the mid-levels of the atmosphere there, drying out, steepening those lapse rates, or the rate at which temperature is decreasing with height. A lot of directional shear, a lot of speed shear as well. Southeasterly winds at the surface, going up to southwesterly, just above the ground, 40 to 50 knot low-level jet. Still a lot of easterly backed winds there too in the low levels of the atmosphere with this photograph. Northeasterly storm motion at about 35 knots, very manageable. Not too meridional as well, so perfect timing with this trough ejection. It's the perfect combination of an open wave, a bowling ball of a vortex there at its base, a lot of flow as well on the backside of that trough, rounding the base of the trough, helping it to dig into northern Mexico out ahead of it. So that's definitely a very favorable tornado setup, it would appear, there across the southern plains. Looking at the moisture situation, you're going to have 60s here. This is basically like early spring relative to the second season. So we're in the fall season right now for severe weather, and that we call that the second season as well as storm chasers. I saw my first tornado ever, October 4, 1998, during the second season as a very big-time Oklahoma outbreak, October 4 of 1998. Then 15 years later, I hit rock bottom, had a seizure in Dominator 3 as I was about to intercept a tornado here in eastern Nebraska, northeastern Nebraska, and ended up having to go to the hospital in Sioux City. Sean Schofer with a Dominator 3 dropped me off there. Didn't have health insurance at the time, so I presented my auto insurance card. I was all out of it mentally, didn't even remember it, and I finally came to trying to break out of the hospital because a tornado warning was issued for Sioux City Hospital there, and I was trying to break out of the hospital to get visual of that tornado when it was moving overhead, and ended up getting a CAT scan and whatnot, but that was in 2013, October 4. And that's why exercise is important, wellness. Got to eat a lot of fiber because we spend a lot of time on the road as storm chasers, and sometimes you lose sight of wellness out there. But there you can see out ahead of this trough, winds southwest to northeast at the mid-levels of the atmosphere, just out ahead of this bowling ball of a system right near the Four Corners region. This would be a big-time snowmaker if this was during the winter. Portions of the southern Rockies would absolutely get slammed all the way up to the Black Hills, Wyoming. Probably going to get slammed anyway by big-time snowfall potentially. And interestingly, this trough, instead of just barreling due east and bringing with it severe weather across the central and eastern U.S., this is going to rocket all the way up toward Hudson Bay with time. And it's going to bring with it a blizzard on its backside. That includes Wyoming as well. Just the most textbook trough ejection that we have seen since probably early spring. And it does look like one day of severe weather with this event. I don't think that the warm sector is going to make it all the way to the upper Midwest for this one. Vortex centered directly over the Black Hills there by Wednesday evening. Snow on the backside, likely some blizzard conditions here across eastern Wyoming where there is sufficient cold air to generate that snowfall. And I'll likely have seen about 10 tornadoes here in western Kansas by this time after that trough moves off to the northeast. And watch it rocket northward toward the Canadian prairies. And I'm going to have to decide whether to chase the tornado threat or do I also try to chase the blizzard on the backside here. Broadus, Billings, northeastern Wyoming, back toward Gillette. I'm going to get hammered on the backside of this 984 millibar low here. And again, we're just looking at the operational GFS right now. There's a lot of other forecast models. They're ensemble members. But the forecast models are in striking agreement with this big-time trough here, ejecting from the Four Corners region, bringing with it severe weather across portions of the central and southern plains, western Kansas, southwestern Nebraska, down into the Panhandle region, and a potential snowstorm on the backside That's going to be Wednesday night. Gillette up to Broadus, getting hammered. 9 to 88 millibar low, lifting north through the Teddy Roosevelt National Forest there. Beautiful area where we saw tornadoes on June 10 earlier this year with Captain Vanover, the drone racer, trying to intercept. And it does look like there's going to be some snow here, maybe in southeastern Alberta, Medicine Hat area down there towards southwestern Saskatchewan. Moose Jaw could get some decent snow out of it. Sean, it looks like you're mainly going to get some wind out of this. Cold rain. Definitely football weather out there for the Saskatchewan Rough Riders. Definitely very cold. Possibly that there could be enough cold air in there to get some snow on the backside as well. But it does look like this main severe weather setup is going to be on Tuesday across the southern plains. You get a 987 low here across eastern Colorado. A dry line sets up across the southern plains as well, right through the panhandles. 60 dew points off to the east. The nose of that moisture coming into western Kansas. Zooming in a bit here to show that dry line and moisture axis. Dew points drop into the 30s back behind it. Dry line sets up across the central panhandles all the way down through the Amarillo area. Low 60s, maybe even mid 60s off to the east. Wouldn't be surprised for that. It looks like we should be able to tap in to these mid and upper 60s that will be over central Texas. Possibly late arrival here of the moisture. Could have a relatively late initiation time, late afternoon. But it is just a little bit early to split hairs and look at the look at things like convective mode or whatnot. There you can see the cape, surface-based cape here. Pushing 2,000, 1,500 to 2,000 across the panhandles. And this is at 0Z. A lot more wind shear if you look at the 0 to 3 kilometer storm relative helicity. Big time wind shear. Kind of reminds me of that setup back in November, about 6 years ago, November 2015. A bunch of nocturnal tornadoes as well across the panhandles. The Texas Panhandle, Oklahoma Panhandle, the Pampa tornado there in the Texas Panhandle went nuts. But very good wind shear all the way up into western Nebraska, western Kansas, back into the northeastern Panhandle region. Plenty of moisture. But if there is a negative factor, it would be late arrival of that moisture. Relative to the second season, we're kind of looking at relatively new moisture. Equivalent time period, probably late March into April. I would say usually the middle portion of October would be ideal. But here you can see the 850 wind crossovers. 850 out here in the high plains is relatively close to the surface. So 850 and those surface winds out of the southeast. And then the 500 millibar winds due southwest to northeast there. Near 90 degree turning between 850 and 500 millibars. So kinematically, in terms of the wind shear, this setup is very favorable for supercells and tornadoes with this classic dry line setup. Surface low, eastern Colorado. Dry line here off to the east near the Kansas-Colorado border, down through western central Oklahoma Panhandle, down through the Oklahoma Panhandle as well. Near 90 degree crossovers between 850 and 500 millibars, looking very favorable there. In terms of bulk shear, tons of bulk shear, near pushing 50 knots there across the dry line. So you're bringing this very favorable bulk shear here across the dry line, 1,500 to 2,000 cape, 40 to 50 knot low-level jet just above the ground, about a kilometer up. A lot of directional shear, too, between those southeasterly 850 winds and due southwesterly 500 millibar winds. So to me, this looks like quite a favorable setup for tornadoes. A lot can still change between now and then. This is Tuesday afternoon out there. But in general, showing you a very, very favorable co-location of that surface-based instability, low-level wind shear, bulk shear as well, plenty of directional shear. We'll just have to see how that moisture situation pans out, but I think once we get within range of the NAM here, within about 84 hours, then you're going to start to see this setup really come together out here. Let's take a look at and see what the European model shows, at least in terms of the shape of the trough. And this is some of that striking agreement that we're talking about. At least showing a big time trough with a lot of flow on the backside. You've got that ski jump configuration poking right into the Four Corners region. Timing could change. It could be a Wednesday type of a setup across the southern plains. Could be Tuesday. The GFS is a little bit faster than the European model. European model is a little bit slower, a little deeper of a system. Could even be 2 days of severe weather, according to the European model. European looks like Wednesday could be the day. Not quite as favorable timing with the European being a little bit later, kind of ejecting Tuesday night across Wednesday morning across the southern plains. So I do think that the GFS is just a little bit more favorable in terms of the timing of that trough ejection. But both of the long-range models show a very substantial trough ejecting. The European model is a little bit slower. So the timing does have to be perfect during the second season, usually, as you often have more dynamic, faster-moving systems like this. Sometimes the moisture isn't quite as favorable. Definitely looks like a blizzard conditions here across central and eastern Montana. Maybe down into northeastern Wyoming as well. But definitely a big mid-latitude cyclone here is going to be happening. And definitely ushers in a pattern change. I do think there is still a chance of a late-season hurricane that'll come out of the Caribbean and into the Gulf of Mexico. Could certainly threaten the Gulf, and I'm keeping a very close eye on that. But I thought that this October 8 through 13 period was going to be either or. It was going to be a severe weather set up with a big-time mid-latitude trough ejection, or there was going to be a system coming out of the Caribbean into the Gulf of Mexico that we'd have to chase and keep a very close eye on. But even the European model has that very meridional ejection of that trough. Not as fast as the GFS, so there are some differences. But in terms of the overall evolution of this trough ejection, a lot of striking similarities between the GFS and the European model. But timing, this faster solution of the GFS is a little bit more favorable for severe weather across the southern plains, western Kansas down into the panhandles to bring those favorable kinematics and bring that moisture up across the southern plains fast enough. But I see enough agreement within the models to deploy a graphic like this. Tornado Alley could come alive next week, Tuesday, maybe Wednesday, depending on timing. The GFS is a little bit more favorable for the timing of that trough ejection, a little bit faster, bringing those favorable kinematics right in tune with peak heating on Tuesday, late afternoon into the evening hours. And again, thank you everybody for tuning in to Storm Rising this Sunday. According to the ratings, it finished just behind Joel Osteen, but looks like it did get some better ratings, and even Wicked Tuna that aired just before it. So you kind of have to compare the shows within the network, similar cable shows as well. But did pretty well. It did air at the same time as Sunday Night Football, the second highest rated NFL football game ever. Certainly didn't help out the situation, but thank you everybody for tuning in out there to Storm Rising, and episode 2 airs on Sunday night at 10 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. Central. That's coming up this next Sunday. And I think that it aired last night as well, too, at about 11 p.m. Eastern, 10 p.m. Central. So it did air again last night. But the next episode covers high plains insanity. We intercept tornadoes. We blow our windshield out, just like the old days of Storm Chasers. And then we pivot toward chasing hurricanes with Hurricane Laura in episode 3. Hurricane Sally in episode 4, Hurricane Delta, and also Hurricane Zeta then in the final episode 5 coming up. So thank you everybody. I really appreciate your support here. I hope that you enjoy my weather reports. I'm going to be back out in the field activating storm chase mode, certainly for this mid-latitude trough ejection. And then I'm going to pivot toward pure leaf peeper mode in the southern Appalachians with my mom out there, as we are going to be shooting drone shots of the beautiful yellows, reds, all those different colors. So thank you, everybody. Stay tuned. The timing of this upper-level trough is critical to determine just how substantial this severe weather event is going to be on Tuesday. Never stop chasing.